Guardians of the B.L.A.D.E. by Adalene Martis. Chapter 24. Emotionally Compromised. A sharp, shrill beep jolted Therak awake. His eyes snapped open, breath catching in his throat as he instinctively reached for the communicator strapped to his hip. The dim lighting of their quarters was warm and quiet, the rhythmic breathing of his cubs filling the air. But the urgent flashing on his device sent his heart racing. Beside him, Nyra was awake, though not because of the alarm. She lay propped against the pillows, her dark fur illuminated by the faint glow of her data pad. Cradled against her chest, Kiran was nestled securely, his tiny body rising and falling in time with her steady breaths. Kiran and Nyra's nocturnal eyes glanced at Therak as he sat up, blinking away his sleep. "What's going on?" she murmured, her voice hushed so as not to wake the other cubs curled up on the sleeping pallet nearby. Therak squinted at the communicator, flipping through the alerts. "I'm not sure yet," he admitted, curling his limbs beneath himself and standing on all four. "I need to get to command and find out." Nyra shifted, adjusting Kiran against her shoulder as she looked at him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "You want me to come with you?" she asked. He shook his head, already making his way to the door. "No, stay here with the cubs." She studied him for a moment. "All right," she relented. "Call me when you find out." Therak met her gaze, offering a small nod, before strapping his communicator back into place and padding quietly out of their quarters. The hallways of the facility were eerily quiet. The dimmed nighttime lighting cast long, muted shadows along the walls, the occasional flicker of emergency indicators the only real movement. The automated systems were set to diurnal sleep cycles, leaving the corridors in a twilight glow, just enough for his eyes to navigate comfortably. Therak's padded feet made little noise as he moved, his instincts sharpening with every step. A deep unease settled in his chest. The AI wouldn't wake him for nothing. As Therak slipped into the command room, the fans in the facility shut off. The ever-present hum of all the noise-making systems suddenly going silent caused Therak's hair to stand on end. He rushed to his captain's seat and looked at the display. A radar image was showing a big blob moving quickly. Something was coming, and it was coming from below. The floor beneath Therak bucked, forcing him to grab onto his console or be knocked over. Something had brushed up against the facility, something large, very large. Then an eye as big as the viewport peered inside, looking straight at him. It was a much larger version of the creature he'd killed earlier, and it was inspecting the ship. Therak had killed its child to feed his own, but there was no way for it to know that. Was there? Therak felt a chill shudder down his spine as he stared into the enormous lidless eye. He felt his lips pull back in a snarl. He flipped open the protective casing over the facility's weapon system, and his finger loomed over the button. One press and he would authorize the AI to fire a controlled blast of the B.L.A.D.E. The blast wouldn't destroy the entire planet, but it would likely flash boil all the water within a good distance of the facility, damaging their hull as well as alerting every ship in the system to their location. The standoff lasted for a tense moment before the behemoth turned its attention elsewhere, its eye pulling away from the viewport as it sank back into the murky depths. Once it had gone, a silent warning scrolled across his display in big, bold letters. Emergency liftoff, 1 minute until departure. Therak sprinted down the corridor from the control room, the metallic floors vibrating beneath his paws as the facility's engines roared to life. Overhead lights flickered, casting intermittent shadows that danced along the walls. The distant hum of machinery escalated into a full-throated rumble as systems powered up for an emergency launch. He burst into the bedroom, his eyes wide with urgency. "Nyra, we're leaving." Nyra sat up from where she was lying next to the cubs. Her ears perked in surprise. "Are we lifting off?" she exclaimed. The cubs began to mule in fear, their small bodies clinging to their mother at the unexpected commotion. "Lay down," Therak commanded, his voice firm. "What? Why, we have—" she began. Her protest was cut short as Therak swiftly grabbed the edges of the thick fur carpet beneath them. With a deft movement, he rolled her and the cubs up together, cocooning them securely. Their muffled cries of indignation echoed from within the bundle. "Therak!" Nyra shouted in alarm. "Hold on," he urged, calling over the escalating noise as the facility began to lift off. He held the makeshift wrap tightly, ensuring his family was protected. Unsecured furniture started to slide and tumble as the angle of the ship shifted sharply. A metal stool careened across the room, heading straight for the carpet bundle. Without hesitation, Therak threw himself in its path. The stool struck his head with a dull thud, a burst of pain radiating through his skull. Stars danced in his vision, but he gritted his teeth and refused to let go of the carpet. The sensation of gravity shifted abruptly. They were suddenly weightless, floating slightly, as the facility breached the planet's atmosphere. Loose objects hovered around them, the datapads, cushions, and smaller items suspended in midair. Then came the disorienting lurch of entering hyperspace. The lights flickered and the edge of every object in the room got fuzzy. Time seemed to blur, the normal sensations of movement replaced by a surreal stillness. Finally, the rumbling subsided as the facility began its descent toward a new planet. Gravity reasserted itself, and the floating items clattered back onto the floor. Eventually, Therak felt the vibrations ease as the facility touched down, signaling the end of the tumultuous journey. He carefully unrolled the carpet, releasing his family. The cubs emerged first, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. Tears glistened on their cheeks as they clung to Nyra, mewling in distress. Nyra was now sitting up, her expression concerned and frustrated. "It's okay, little ones," she soothed, wrapping her arms around them. She continued to calm them, assuring them everything's all right. Therak leaned against the wall, a trickle of warm blood seeping from a cut on his forehead where the stool had struck him. Nyra's gaze shifted to him, and her eyes widened in alarm. "Therak, you're bleeding again!" she exclaimed, quickly moving to his side. He managed a wry smile. "It's just a scratch," he said. She gently touched the wound, her fingertips coming away stained. "What in the world happened?" she demanded, her tone edged with irritation. "There was an emergency takeoff," he explained, still catching his breath. "Something big swam too close to the ship." Nyra's eyes flashed with anger. "An emergency takeoff? Without any warning?" She stood abruptly, her tail flicking sharply behind her. "This is unacceptable." She snatched the datapad from the ground where it had slid and tapped into the communication interface. Holding it up, she began to speak sharply into the microphone. "We were asleep. You gave us no warning. We could have been hurt. What would you do if your engineer had gotten her skull split open, huh? What then?" "The captain very nearly did," she shouted. Therak watched as lines of text scrolled across the datapad screen, the AI's response delivered in cold, impersonal language. "Crew safety, while valued, is secondary to ensuring mission success." Nyra hissed at the screen, her frustration boiling over into a sharp growl. "I'm sick of this. Let's see what you do when I switch you over to manual navigation," she said, menacingly. "Impossible," it responded. "What? You don't think I can? Watch me, you stubborn tin can. I can pilot this facility just as well as you can," she snarled. Without waiting for a response, Nyra spun on her heel and stormed out of the bedroom, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. "Nyra, Therak called after her. He took a step to follow, but swayed slightly as a wave of dizziness washed over him. The room tilted, and he braced himself against the wall. The cubs huddled together, their eyes looking up at Therak. Lyra tugged gently at Therak's leg. "Popper hurt?" his daughter asked in her sweet voice. He knelt down, mustering a reassuring smile despite the throbbing pain in his head. "I'm all right, Lyra. It's just a bump. Papa's tough. Don't worry." Maum clung to his arm. "Where mer Romgo?" Therak gently stroked his fur. "She's just a bit upset. I'll go find her." Kieran's eyes narrowed with determination. "Mrum," he called as he bashed his shoulder against the door. It hurt him, so he hissed at the door instead. Therak shook his head softly. "Kieran, stop. I'll go check on your mother." The cubs crowded around the door, mewling as Therak made his way out into the corridor. He had to push them back with his foot to get through. They really didn't want to be left alone after having such a fright. Meanwhile, Nyra marched ahead of him into the control room, still furious. When he caught up to her, she was sitting in front of the central console, her fingers flying over the controls as she accessed the navigation systems. "Override command sequence," she muttered, entering a series of codes. The screens flickered in response, lines of code scrolling rapidly. A synthesized voice emanated from the console. "Unauthorized access detected. Please input authorization code." Nyra's eyes narrowed. "Authorization code. Engineer Alpha 973, she declared. "Code accepted," the AI responded. "Engineer Nyra, state your intention." She took a deep breath. "I'm initiating manual navigation control. Your automated protocols have jeopardized crew safety. Manual control is restricted. Automated navigation ensures optimal safety and efficiency." The AI countered. She clenched her fists. "Optimal safety? You launched without warning. We could have been seriously injured," she said. Emergency protocols were engaged to avoid external threats. Crew alert was deprioritized due to the situation and time constraints, it replied. Her frustration peaked. "Deprioritized? We're not just data points in your system. We're living beings," she insisted. There was a brief pause before the AI responded. "Crew is replaceable, the B.L.A.D.E is not." She stared at the console, surprised by the coldness. You turd! I've had it," she shouted. In a flash of anger, Nyra's fingers flew over the keys on the console. The screen went blank as the AI shut off her input. She ripped open a panel below the console in response and examined some wiring. "What are you doing?" Therak asked from the doorway. "What does it look like?" she said. "I'm hot-wiring a super-intelligent death machine." Therak blinked, and in a flash, the screen was back up, scrolling through permissions while trying to lock Nyra out of its systems. Nyra countered it, her fingers flying over the controls once more, a look of intense concentration on her face. "Think you can fuck with me? I've grown AI better than you. I've memorized all the Farron security codes. What now?" she said as she slammed her finger down on the return with satisfaction. Suddenly, the lights shifted to red. "Authorized personnel have used unauthorized methods to subvert the mission. Self-destruct sequence will now be initiated." "Whoa!" she shouted. "Don't be hasty. Just because you lost doesn't mean you have to blow us all up," said Nyra. Therak stepped forward, placing a firm but gentle hand on Nyra's shoulder. "Computer Chief Engineer Nyra has broken protocol and is being restrained until she calms down," he announced with authority. "She's emotionally compromised and is temporarily relieved of duty. There's no need to initiate self-destruct." The AI's voice resonated through the control room, cold and unyielding. "Captain Therak, unauthorized access has compromised mission integrity. Restore the severed wiring and terminate all attempts to bypass control protocols immediately. Therak met Nyra's gaze, his eyes filled with urgency. Nyra, you need to fix this, now. Her expression shifted from anger to frustration, and then to resignation. Her ears flattened slightly as she realized the gravity of the situation. With a reluctant nod, she turned back to the open panel. Her hands moved deftly but shakily as she reconnected the wires she had previously tampered with. The red emergency lights cast a stark glow over her features, highlighting the tension etched across her face. Her shoulders hunched as she worked swiftly to reverse her actions. Unauthorized access still detected, the AI warned. Self-destruct sequence will proceed unless full system integrity is restored. Almost there, you sore loser. Stop rushing me, Nyra muttered under her breath, her fingers flying over the wires and circuits. With a final adjustment, she reconnected the last wire and closed the panel. Immediately, the red lights flickered and then switched back to the standard illumination. System integrity restored, the AI announced. Self-destruct sequence aborted. Nyra exhaled deeply, her shoulders sagging as the adrenaline drained from her body. The weight of what had just transpired settled heavily upon her. She turned to face Therak, her eyes reflecting a tumult of emotions. He stepped closer. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go that far." Therak placed a comforting hand on her back, guiding her away from the control room. "Let's get out of here," he suggested softly. As they walked down the corridor, the hum of the facility's systems seemed louder in the ensuing silence. Nyra's gaze was fixed on the floor, her tail drooping behind her. Therak glanced at her with concern. "Did you know it would do that?" she finally asked. He shook his head. "No, I didn't," he admitted, "but it makes sense that command would install a failsafe to keep the blade out of enemy hands." She bit her lip, her ears twitching slightly. "I should have been more careful. That was my plan B, and I blew it. I won't get another chance at that," she said. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Plan B? Just how many plans like that do you have?" She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I just want to find a way out of here," she whispered. "For us and for the cubs." He nodded, his gaze steady. "I know. If you had told me your plan, I could have warned you it was a bad idea. I may not have known about why, but I was warned that the AI was given ultimate authority on where it's going, and not to interfere with the navigation system." "You're right," she conceded. "I'm sorry." He offered a small smile and patted her on the back. "It's all right. We didn't get blown up. It's a good day." They continued down the hallway, the tension slowly easing between them. Therak kept a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his presence a steady comfort. "I'll find another way to get us out of here," Nyra said after a moment, determination creeping back into her voice. "No matter how long it takes," she said. He gave her an encouraging nod. "I believe you, and I'll help in any way I can. But before that, would you like to see the new planet we landed on? Who knows? There might be something tasty out there." She managed a faint smile. "Good food does make being stranded in space easier," she said, and as they approached the living quarters, they leaned against each other, supporting each other's weight.